storm. Riders on the storm. Into this house we're born. Into this world we're thrown. Like a dog without a bone, an actor out on loan. Riders on the storm. There's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad.
I'm telling you, Benny, this should be a part of our introduction. And trust me, it's not a part of our introduction. You outdid yourself again, man, with that introduction video with the doors. Man, Benny, I don't know how you do it, man, pero te aventas. Every week it gets better. We'll see. So you're going to surprise us next week with a Vicente Fernandez song, I bet you. Yeah. Hey, man, you did a great job, Benny. With that said, guys, I'm very excited. We have, if I could say, one of my best friends, Manny Rodriguez, Chief Rodriguez. I know, Benny, you're going to talk about him, but I'll tell you, I literally owe my life to him. And I'm not going to get into specifics, but there were times in my life when I was really down and out, and that's the guy who literally saved me from a lot of pain and sorrow. And literally, I love Manny, and I'm excited to have him on the show. But guys, Benny, you're going to do all the intro. I'm not going to take the spot, but man, I'm grateful that he's on the show, and I think we're all going to enjoy him. With that said, Chalo, I know you have a shout out. We'll start off with you, brother.
Yeah, so I should have mentioned this last week. Here in Imperial County, especially from Calexico, we have two sisters. One, I believe, is just turned 14. The other one's getting ready to turn 19. Their names are Liz, and they call her Yaya Oseguera. They're from Liz and Yaya Oseguera Boxing. Yaya is ranked number 1 in the nation in her weight category. She's, I think, 101 pounds. And the sister's ranked number 2 with USA Boxing. Yaya, 7 times national champion, and the sister Liz, there you go. Liz is 3 times national champion. So hopefully, it'll be, I should have done it last week, but Liz Yaya just became the Silver Gloves champion, national champion. This past week they traveled to, I want to say, Missouri, I think, where they had the boxing event at. But hats off to Dad and Mom, especially Dad, who is the trainer manager, and Mom, who supports them and does everything else, a mother does. But they're they do a lot of local fundraising and stuff like that. They don't have anybody sponsoring them other than their parents and the community. So
you know what, Chalo, maybe we could have them on. I think right now, Benny, we're booked all the way till June, right, Benny? Or May?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in the future we could have them, maybe do like a fundraiser for them, Chalo.
Awesome.
That would be awesome. Let's start planning it. Yeah, especially,
right,
that would be awesome. Sean, I know you have a shout out. Go ahead, brother.
You're going to talk about Spanky, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. No, just hold on. Enough said.
Great game.
Yeah, it was a good game. That's it.
All right. Guys, I want to welcome 4OJ all the way from San Jose, JC, our faithful listener, Justin Cunningham, JC, and once again, Ceci Escano, saludos a todos, bienvenida. Once again, sister, you're part of the family. And Doug Collier, he's going to be with us next week. and we'll be talking about them on Tuesday. Oh, we have 2 episodes with Doug. They're going to be on a Thursday night. They're going to be outstanding. And 40J says Chalo gives his best. And JC, once again, welcome to the show, guys. Guys, but before we get started, I want to do a quick, not a shout out, but in memory of this man right here, retired Detective Sergeant Steve Spanky Larson. I worked for him. That's another one that when I was down and out, I'll tell you, after my divorce, I went through a lot of hell that I created myself. But it was men like this that literally reached out and helped me, lifted me up. Manny Rodriguez. But this is another gentleman. I believe he died today, and I'd like to basically say, rest in peace, my brother. We will see you soon in heaven. Rest in peace. Retired Detective Sergeant, San Diego Police Sergeant Steve Spanky Larson. We love you, brother, and we'll see you in heaven.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Great man. Great man. With that said, Benny, it's all yours, brother.
Well, this is going to be part of a series that we're doing. We're covering the 10 deadly errors of basically law enforcement. We started with Sean with the 10 deadly errors of a police officer, a street cop. And now we're going to do Manuel Rodriguez, who's retired chief of police from National City. He has nearly 3 decades of experience in law enforcement. He served on the San Diego Police Department from 1986 to 2005 and was appointed chief of police for the National City Police Department in 2013, and then he retired in 2019. As a chief of police, he oversaw the police department's $24 million budget and a staff of 120. Chief Rodriguez has been described by many as a humble, loyal, and dedicated person who will be there for you. Someone with integrity, self-awareness, courage, respect, and compassion. These are the traits of a real man. Today, we're going to discuss some of the pitfalls of being an effective chief. As many know, chiefs of police, sheriffs, and law enforcement administrators must be aware of these pitfalls and work to avoid them to be an effective and successful leader. Just like I said, this is going to be part of a series. We've got to be covering the 10 deadly errors of a prison warden. We're going to have Hector Bravo coming in. He's going to be talking about the 10 deadly errors of a correctional officer. So we're covering every profession in our profession. Thank you very much for joining us, Chief.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with all of you today.
Chief, again, taking time and being here with us tonight. But let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, family dynamics, your service to our country. Did you always want to be a police officer?
That's an excellent question. And no, actually, that wasn't in the cards at the beginning. I come from an immigrant family. It's funny when I remind people that, as an immigrant, English is actually my second language. And we moved to National City. National City has always been, I guess, my lucky charm. I thrived in National City. I graduated from there. I actually was the Associated Student Body president. And it was funny because when I was in high school, I had gone to my counselor. And my counselor, I said, hey, all my friends were going to college. And I said, hey, I want to go to college. And he said, no, you don't want to go to college. You need to go to the trade school. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because when I take wood shop, the things come out crooked. When I use metal shop, they come out crooked. When I took auto shop, I had a hard time figuring out a lot of the parts of the car. So I'm like, when he said trade school, I'm like, oh, that makes no sense to me. So what I did is I actually applied to San Diego State. And when I actually got the acceptance letter, I went back and I said, hey, listen, we talked about going to college. And he said, no. He said, I think it's better at trade school. I said, well, I've already been accepted to San Diego State. And he said, no. He said, then you should go to a junior college. So they tried to talk me out of it. So I went ahead and went to San Diego State. And one of the things that I did while I was there is I joined the Army Reserve. And for me, that was a really good move because it provided a lot of discipline, gave me the ability to gain some skills in leadership. And then after I graduated, or when I was about to graduate, one day I was walking around the campus and there were recruiters, and San Diego Police Department was there, and they were recruiting. And so I go, well, you know what? I'll just sign up to take the test. So I went ahead and took the test, and so I passed the test, and it was like every 3 months, and then this took a whole year, by the way. So every 3 months they'd call me back for something like, okay, well, you took the test, now you do the physical agility, we scheduled you for that. Anyway, so I went through the whole year. I was about to graduate, and they offered me a spot in the April Academy. And so I didn't have to do any interviews for when to graduate. So I just went ahead and my feeling was I've got a degree, and so I have a lot of opportunities. Because one of the things that I found out in the work world, if you don't have the degrees, they often tell you no. I mean, I don't like being told no. Do you like being told no? Nobody does. So I figured out, hey, I got to get my degree for me to move on. And so I went ahead and joined San Diego Police Department. I mean, it was, one of the, I mean, it's life changing, I think, to become a police officer. And so I worked with San Diego for almost 20 years. And then one of the things working through San Diego PD was the fact that you have to come up with goals. So at one point you have to make a decision. Where do I want to end up? And one of the important things to me was really I've seen what people can do, but I wanted to make a difference. And I thought, you know what, I want to become a chief. So that I set that as my goal. And so when the opportunity came up in National City, then to pick up a captain spot and possibly promote up, I went ahead and took it. So for me, it's been a lifelong experience to go through the process and become chief. I think it's a tremendous profession, and as you often have to remind people, policing is not a job; it's a calling, and it's a noble calling because there aren't too many professions that you can have to put your life on the line in order to help people, and that's what often happens. I mean, there's a few that I can think of, but life saving and putting your life on the line. Certainly law enforcement does that, while there's a few other professions, I think that's what makes it so noble. Okay.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, we must have had the same counselor. Yeah, it was Sweetwater Union High School District, right?
I'm sorry?
That was a Sweetwater Union High School District?
It was.
Yeah. My counselor said I should be a farmer. Anyways. Hey, Manny, let's start with the 10 deadly errors for police chiefs. And let's begin with the failure. Can you address failure to adapt?
Right. And I think this is an important one because I think that a lot of times we don't understand the amount of change that, in general, organizations go through. But as a chief, you have to understand that you have to adapt to the change. And what really, I think, spotlights this, when I first started on the police department, and I still remember this to this day, there were senior officers who were retiring because they did not want to learn how to operate computers in the car. and to me, I didn't know anything about it. So, the computer or no computer, I didn't know much about it. So it didn't make a lot of difference to me. I just learned whatever they tossed at me. But there's this failure sometimes that we take a stance where we're not going to, adapt to what's coming. And as a chief, I think that's one of your biggest downfalls if you don't do that. If you don't see what's coming up, then you're going to suffer the consequences because policing has changed. And as a police chief, one of the main things, and we often don't talk about it, but really councils change, mayors change, city managers change. So the reality of it is that there's a constant adaptation that you have to take in order to be successful. So adaptability is certainly one of those main factors that I think to be a successful chief, you always have to do. And in policing, because we also are seeing so many novel things. We have drones, in Narcan. One of the things, when I was in National City, we were one of the first municipalities in the county to have the officers carry Narcan. In the first month we did it, we saved 5 lives. And the philosophy that I used at the time, is if we only save 1 life in a year, right? I think the Narcan really is worth it. And certainly, and again, as we're evolving now, most police departments are carrying it. Same thing with the drones. We're going to see a lot of changes coming in technology. But what doesn't change is, people's priorities that you as a chief have to look at, what the priorities are of the people you serve, whether it's the council, your community groups, your business groups, whatever it may be. So you constantly have to adapt to those changes. And if you don't adapt and you don't see what's coming up, it's going to hit you and knock you over.
Hey, Manny, did you find it difficult to adapt from like a San Diego PD and San Diego politics mindset and then going to National City?
I didn't have a lot of difficulty in adjusting to that. I think that the biggest change is you're closer to city government than you were in San Diego. And what I mean by that is, San Diego is so much larger, but you still have to deal with the politicians. And we always, even I was acting captain at our Northern Division for San Diego PD, and the council members would call about something going on in the community. And so it's the same thing in National City. When something's going on in their area that they're concerned about, they would call, but they would call the chief, right? So they would call me in National City, where in San Diego, they would normally call like the captain of the area station. But I didn't have a lot of adaptation issues, and primarily because, as a county law enforcement works together. So the policies are very similar on how you approach certain things. But I think the dynamics of how you work with people is really where you're, there's a learning curve there, because again, you're dealing with different councils, different communities, but they're all similar in a way, right? Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody wants, to feel safe in their communities. And so when you all can reach that point, then I think you move forward.
Hey, Manny, since we're talking about the 10 deadly errors the chief of police can make, can you give us an example of somebody that basically failed to adapt? And that's where you got it from. You know what? Because he failed to adapt, this was his downfall. Can you give us an example on that issue?
Well, I think there are plenty, but I would probably, if I were to use one, I would probably say that what we saw in LA with the Sheriff Villanueva, I think was probably one of the better examples. There was not a need. He did not want to adapt to what was going on to the politics. He wanted to drive the politics. And you can kind of do that as an elected person, I think, a lot more than you could as a chief. But I think he's a good example of, you have to adapt to what the community is asking you to do and to work with elected leaders. And if you don't do that, then it's going to hurt you. And I think if you, because I follow a lot of these trends, I follow a lot of these folks, and I think it's important to understand that, because a lot of times chiefs are caught up in things, not of they're doing, but of what's going on around them, and every time there's a new mayor or a new council member, it can mean there's a change in the direction that the city wants to go. And if the chief is not perceptive enough, then they're often going to, lose their position, not because of anything they did, not because of incompetence, but because there was circumstances around them that changed in a dramatic way. And sometimes there's no getting over that, and I think that's important to understand.
Go ahead, Sean, number 2.
Yeah, let's go with lack of fairness.
Okay, so I think that's one of the biggest things we also look at, right? I think as as a police officer, we saw and see a lot of unfairness going on, and I know we want to think that the world is 50-50 and everybody's treated right, but the bottom line is that as police officers, we see a lot of unfairness. So there's nothing that upsets your personnel, police officers, more than being or seeing things as unfair or treating people as unfair. And when that happens, it erodes morale, it erodes trust. And so it's important for the leader, the chief, to understand, that you have to be seen as fair, and that you have to treat people fairly. And so let me give you an example. I was actually the assistant chief, but I was accused of being biased. And so what happened was we had two accidents. So one of the officers hit a car, and so he was P1 preventable. So it's a preventable accident. And the other one, same thing. He hit a car and he was P1 preventable. So when I dished out the punishment, one got a written warning and the other one got a reprimand. So you say, well, that seems unfair because they got the same punishment for the same kind of issue. The problem was that's not what happened. What happened is one guy was driving in a parking garage and tore off half the corner of the whole car. No other cars were involved, but he hit a barrier, probably because he was looking at his phone in this empty parking structure. The other one hit a car as it was backing, put a dent in the bumper that nobody would have probably noticed if he hadn't reported it. See, so again, if you look at those two cases, you say, wow, they should both receive the same. And one of the things that I always try to remind people is, treating everybody the same isn't treating people fairly. Fairly has to be evaluated on what's going on, the circumstances of what's going on. But it's an important component. It's a very important aspect of being a chief and making sure that you're treating people fairly and that they are seeing you as a fair person. If they don't see you as a fair person, they can't trust you. And then you become a difficult person to work with, or they become difficult at working with you, however you want to look at it.
Go ahead, Sean, number 4.
Yeah, how about lack of empathy?
Yeah, I think it's one of the more important ones. We have to have compassion for the folks that we work with. We have to have compassion for the people that we serve. And I think a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times because I didn't see it very often, but if chiefs cannot empathize with what their officers are going through, whether it's a divorce, whether they have a substance abuse issue, whatever it may be, if they don't have that, I think it's always going to hurt them in relating and building morale in the organization. Yep. And I think that's an important component that people have to see that you care. And you can show that in a variety of ways. When an officer is injured and goes to the hospital, stopping by, or after they get out of the hospital, stopping by, or calling them. The things that you would do as a human being to another human being to make them understand that you care. I think that's really the key. But when leaders don't show empathy, it means they don't care. And if you don't care, why should I care? Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it reciprocates and it builds that. So for morale issues, I think it's always important to make sure that, you don't hold back. And for me, it's always about compassion. As I've gotten older and as I've matured in the profession, I think one of the things you really look at is compassion. You have to, look at things and look at them again and say, am I being compassionate in this area? Because we work in a very hard profession. It's very easy to dismiss people, but you shouldn't really dismiss people's pain, whether they work for you or whether you're serving them.
Hey, Manny, during the hiring process to become a chief of police, can you give us an example of a question that they could ask you, the hiring panel, whether it's made of community members or personnel, city personnel or police personnel, that is related to showing the candidate has empathy? Can you give us an example?
I think the biggest question that they always ask you is, what's your plan? A lot of times when you're in these panels, they will say, well, what's your plan for the first 100 days? And I think that's really it's an open question, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that your first 100 days in a new organization, as the head of the organization, even if you've been there, you want to get as much input as possible. And so what does that show people? That you care because you want to listen to them. And you want to see what their issues are, so you find ways to address them. And so a lot of times, I think that's what you do is the question they would probably ask you is, what's your plan for the next your first 100 days as chief? And if you don't have one, then you haven't given it much thought. But the reality of it is that that is a question that I think is germane to where you can show the compassion and show that you care about your community.
Next question, Chalo, former
Wow.
chief of police from Calexico.
Hey, so welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your
Nice to
service.
meet you, Chief.
And
Thank you.
Chief. Hey, so man, you're hitting every point, and I'm going. Yeah, very true, very true. And you can't be successful without following these steps. So failure to mentor is one of the things that I saw a lot as I was coming up my career.
And I think that's a very important one for me. The reason that I started the National Latino Peace Officers Association chapter in San Diego was the fact that there wasn't any mentoring for folks, and especially the Latinos at the time. As I recall, when I first started, there was maybe one lieutenant that was Latino, and there was an assistant chief, and they pretty much thought that was enough. And the force wasn't as big, but I think when you have almost 1,000 officers, that I think you can have more diversity there. And so one of the things that I did was to start a mentoring program when I started the organization, because I thought it was a good way to build folks and prepare them. Because one of the biggest things that you don't get is experience. So by having an organization like an LPOA and putting together fundraisers, putting together trainings, doing a variety of things where you pick up a lot of these skills that you will use, from an administrative perspective as you move up in the organization. I thought that was very important. But to me, mentoring is critical for the organization to grow as a whole. Because if you don't, as a chief, if you don't encourage folks to expand their horizons, get a bigger education, and learn new ways to do things, then the organization itself diminishes. It doesn't thrive, it contracts. And you can't have this in this day and age. And you also want to build, the mentoring that goes. And what I mean by that is, and I'll give you an example. Chief of National City, he just got promoted, Alex Hernandez. And when I arrived at National City, he was an officer. And he'd been there as an explorer. But again, I think that, under the direction of Chief Gonzalez before me and with me, and I'm sure with Chief Tejas, all those folks providing a lot of mentoring to him in order for him to reach the pinnacle of the career, which I think is important for everyone. But when you look at these things, without the mentoring component, the organization isn't really growing, it's shrinking. And so if you want the organization to thrive, you want to make sure that your folks are getting, the best information available. And that's usually through education and providing them opportunities to get into leadership positions.
Hey, Manny, talking about mentoring, the NLPOA, the National Latino Police Association, the first San Diego Police Department female is now the president, Nina Medina, and I remember you mentoring her.
Well,
her.
I don't know if I mentor her, but certainly I've always been available for folks.
Yes.
Certainly to try to give them some direction, at least with what I see. And I always like to say that, it's a perspective. It's not always the only perspective out there. But yeah, I think she's always shown leadership qualities, and I think that that's carried through, and certainly shows up here with her becoming national president of National Latino Peace Officers Association.
And she's going to be our
Congratulations,
guest.
Nina.
She's going to be our guest next week. She's going to be our
Excellent.
guest, so she'll be on our show. We're looking forward to it. Chalo, go ahead,
That's
my
great.
brother.
Well, you know what, and you touched something on the lack of mentoring. I come from a department that's probably what 1/4, 1/5 of the size of National City, and fortunately and unfortunately for me, my mentors were my other than Mexican leaders, bosses. The worst boss I had was a Mexicano. Worst boss. That guy had so much uh jealousy. I guess he was afraid, that I was gonna do better. I was a lieutenant, he was a chief, and instead of mentoring myself and the other lieutenant, because here in Calexico we went from chief to lieutenants because they took away our commander status. So we're the next in line, and he treated the other lieutenant, who was Mexicano too, like crap. And we're going, man, this guy's afraid that we're not ready to retire, so we're not going to step up and try to take his job. We still had about 5 years before we could even think about becoming chief. So the guy was, in a way, he was a pendejo, because if he would have, well, he didn't have much to offer anyways. But if he would have just worked with us, we would have made him look good. He would have done his 5 years instead of just doing a year and a half, and things would have happened in a good way for him. But like I said, we are probably our worst enemies when it comes to being not many Mexicanos, Hispanic, Latino people care for their people and they want to bring people up. I think it's probably like a 50-50, where they're tienen envidia, like to say, and Sean, envidia means envidia. For you.
I'm
Okay.
looking up in Benny's book right
Oh,
now.
Benny's book, yeah. It's probably on page in the I, so it's probably in the middle of the book.
Is it I or is it an E?
It starts with an I, but you can actually
Okay.
E or the Y if you want to sometimes.
Okay.
I'm just kidding, bro. Anyway, so it's just
Hey, Carlo, hey, Carlo,
yo,
can I interrupt real quick?
No.
I got a real quick question, Chief.
Sure.
How do you select somebody to mentor? How do you select that person?
Yeah, that's a good
Well,
question.
yeah, I think the biggest thing you see is those individuals that apply themselves. I think that's what I see. People that want to learn, people that have that itch to do more than what they're doing. The guy that sits back and says, I know everything, I don't need anything. You try to kind of coach them in, but the reality of it is, like most things, human beings are going to do what they do, right? So you can invite folks in. And a lot of times when you invite folks, some will take your invitation. A lot of them won't. And so a lot of times what you're looking for is folks that want to go beyond what they're doing, want to do more than they're doing, and care about what they're doing. See, I can teach you a lot of skills. All right. And police work has a lot of hard skills, how to shoot, how to run, how to tackle, how to do all these things. The hardest parts are, we can't teach you to care, and we can't teach you we can teach you to communicate better, but to communicate as a human being, that's something it's a soft skill you have to learn.
Chief, and it's funny because I'm pretty sure everybody here, we've all had that one person that we try to mentor, or a subordinate under us that we tell them, hey, bro, I need you to step it up, and I need you to show your guys everything you know. And they would tell me, later on I would find out, and it says that, the guys would say, well, you know what? I'm not going to teach them everything I know, because then, they know everything that I know. And I was like, I put these two guys in one time, and I said, look, one of them actually turned his way around, and he was a sergeant, and he started doing what I asked him to do, and he became a good sergeant, and his patrol guys were probably one of the best shifts. The other one didn't. And I said, pues, you know what? You're going to suffer at the end. And I used to tell him, look, dude, I wish I could get everything I have, put a USB drive, download everything, and insert it in everybody in my department. That would have made my job a lot easier. And I said, I don't know about you guys, but I like to show everything I know to you. I'll show it to you. I have no fear of showing you. I'm not afraid. I'm hoping you'll do better than me. It makes it easier for me. I'm already at where I'm at. I mean, you can't you know, it's the same with you, chief, right? You made it to chief. You're the chief. What's
That's
next?
it.
Retirement, right? I mean, retirement. And you know what? That's not bad.
No. But I
It,
agree with you.
Yeah.
I think one of the important parts of what you're saying is I think it's that some people are afraid, to teach, but sometimes they're afraid for the wrong reason. In other words, let me give you an example. We think they know what they know, right? But they lack the self-confidence. So what happens is they're afraid that they're gonna expose their
Weaknesses.
weaknesses,
Hmm.
because when you mentor people, just like I do some teaching, you learn stuff. It's not a one-way
Oh,
conversation, So when you mentor somebody, or somebody asks you a question that you never really thought about, oh, well, I never really thought about it in that way. So it's like an aha moment. And so that's the value of mentoring. We think we're mentoring folks, but we're also learning from them. It's not a one-way communication. So I think that's maybe there's a misnomer about mentoring is you're only teaching folks. No,
yeah.
they're teaching you too in a different way. So I think it's that interaction that's really helpful.
hey, Manny, you're known through San Diego PD as a mentor. I mean, you implemented so many great programs. I'm sure with National City PD, I didn't keep your track there, but me being one of your mentees with San Diego PD, can you share with our audience and also with our co-hosts some of the mentorship programs that you actually started, implemented, and they're still around today?
Sure. Well, the main one was I implemented a 9 month, one Saturday a day class to prepare people for the written test, right? Because in San Diego and depending on the process, but they're normally pretty similar. So they would have a written test, and so we would prepare folks. And how I started this was actually I would ask people that took the sergeant's test at the time would say, "Can you remember one or two questions?" You know, and they would, and then they would give us all these questions. So we would have a bunch of questions to be able to test folks on. And over the 9 month period, we would go over leadership, but we'd go over policies and procedures. Because one of the problems that you have is when you see something written, sometimes it's about interpretation. So let me give you an example that we had on the policies and procedures. Only two cars can pursue,
Hmm.
right? But what about when there are two are pursuing, but one's paralleling, right? And so the question could be asked in a way that, yeah, it's technically two cars, but well, does that include the helicopter or doesn't it? So does that include the canine? Because the
Yeah,
canine is going to have to be there at the end.
has to be there.
So getting folks ready to take a test, because people think that tests are a measure of their intelligence, and they're not. They're a measure of the information that you're being presented with, how well you know it, or you studied for it or didn't study for it. So that's one aspect of it. The second part that we saw people weren't doing well at the time was the interviews. So we would tape them, and after they passed the test, we would do mock interviews. And then we would videotape them at the time because it was an important component to them, to get the feedback. Now back then, like some of the folks, what they would dress to go in an interview in a shark suit. What I say a shark suit is that shiny material, you
Hmm.
know, and you would say, okay, well, wait a minute. And they wouldn't get critique in the actual interview for that, but it's a perception that you're giving, right? And that's a big part of it. So we'd say, look, you're not going out for a night on the town. Okay. You're not going to go out there dancing. This is a conservative organization. Okay. You have to kind of tone it down a little bit for that. So again, those kinds of tips. But it wasn't just me. I mean, I had a bunch of cadre, that David and other folks, Juan Gonzalez, and all these folks that sat on panels with me that we put together in order to make this happen. And the how that carried on in National City is we went ahead and formalized it there. We actually worked with the HR department, and through our department, we would get all the information and put it out in the class. And I think San Diego now is doing something similar to that, but we started that in National City. So it didn't have to be like NLPOA. It was actually through the police department, and then everybody could come as long as they could get the time off. And then one of the other things that I've is for the community. the use of force workshops. I started them in San Diego and brought them to National City, and that's when we bring in people from the community, and they play police officers, and the police officers play the bad guys, and it really opens up people's eyes up. And again, this is training for the community that I think is real. Most of the folks that have gone through that, and I run into them, even to this day, tell me how great of an experience it was, because it opened their eyes to what police work's about. Because police work's about milliseconds. It isn't about minutes and hours. That's somebody else's world.
And it's funny, Manny, you started that. Now the sheriffs have it, Chula Vista PD, LAPD, but it started with your vision. And that's where Chalo's next question. But before we do, Doug Collier is going to be with us next week. He says, I went to your mock interview for Sergeant. It was open for everyone, and it helped. Yes. Go ahead, Chalo.
Chief, and the ironic thing about this is the people that go to these classes always, most of the time, promote. And the people that think they should be promoting that don't take these things don't do well, and then they blame favoritism. Oh yeah, he had it in. They went to these things, and the lieutenant and the chiefs and everybody saw him going to, so that's why they got it. And to me, it's like, you know what? Nah, it's what you put in there. And speaking about those shark skin suits, it's only good in Miami. It works in Florida pretty good, Miami Vice.
Chalo still has one.
Yeah, still have one. Yeah.
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying don't wear it in your interview.
And in a little suit, and I tear that thing.
Hey, Chalo, before your next question, Patsy Cruz says, evening, gentlemen. Just want to let you know the book, When the Music Stops, the Pain Begins, is awesome. I am on page 76. It's hard to put down when you pick it up. You could buy it. We'll talk about it after. Thank you, Patsy, for recommending the book. Go ahead, Chalo, with your next question.
Hi, Patsy.
Okay.
Anyways, lack of vision, and it's one of the big ones too. I mean, that I saw a lot.
Well, I got to tell you that lack of vision, I think, is you can't lead people, without knowing where to take them. And the lack of vision certainly, if you're not able to inspire people to where the organization needs to go, I think is critical. Because one of the things that happens is police officers, we get competent at what we do. But as a chief, you don't, it's not about operations. It's about motivating and taking the organization to a place, okay, that's going to make things better for everyone. And the community you serve, the officers, the civilian staff, all those folks. But you got to give them a clear direction. For example, I think that one of the biggest things that most departments do is we want to be the best organization, that serves any community as a law enforcement agency. And that's where we want to go. So how are we going to get there? Right. And I think that's what's important is you have that vision. You set the agenda of what we're going to do and what we're going to be. How we're going to get there is how you get all that input and you get people to buy into it and then move everybody forward. So that's where I think a lot of it is understanding, the vision and projecting that vision to your personnel and then to the communities you serve so that it can all mesh together and make it happen.
Hey, Manny, real quick, how much does politics and the budget fall into that?
Well, I think that it's very important. I think that one of the things you have to understand, if you really want to see what the priorities of any government are, is you look at their budget, right? Because you can get a lot of rhetoric about everything. Oh, we love the police department. Oh, we love the fire department. But if you're not funding them in order to serve the community, then you don't really love them because that's not really a priority. And like in San Diego, I mean, they would always say how much the community loves us and everything else. But the city, even though police department takes the biggest chunk, the city would not provide the resources that were needed because they had other priorities. In National City, we had a strong working relationship between the Police Officer Association, the city manager's office, the council, and the community in order to make sure that the budget reflected the priority. And so, yeah, National City Police Department took a big chunk of that, of the whole budget of the city. And then, the fire department, because the one thing that you have to understand about how things get funded and the priorities is, as police departments, we need people to provide safety and services. And if you don't have those people, you can't do it. So if you don't get a budget that's worthy of hiring people and bring good people on board that are going to serve that community and that vision of providing the best possible service, then you're not going to be successful. But yeah, there is no question that the budget and the politics are interwoven.
Yeah, I remember one time. I don't know if you were down in Southern at the time, but we were counting paper clips and we couldn't make copies of reports because we couldn't.
Oh, you think that's bad? I was at Northern. We couldn't buy toilet paper. The captain put up his money and went and bought a case of toilet paper and couldn't make copies because we didn't have paper either. I remember that.
Go ahead, Chalo, with the next question.
Sean.
That was Chalo's lack of vision, right?
Oh, yeah,
yes. Oh, shoot, Sean. I'm sorry, Sean.
Yeah,
Go
mine.
ahead.
Man, let's talk about poor communication.
Okay. What do you want to
know? I mean,
no, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
I'm throwing it out there. Yeah. Good segue.
More communication.
Yeah, something about how the filters, everything rolls downhill, that type of stuff. But yeah, information rarely goes, or good information rarely goes up.
I agree. I think one of the things as a chief is you have to be consistent in your messaging. When you're not consistent in your messaging, that's where you develop problems in the organization. And so let me give an example that we used all the time in the chief's office. We put out, department announcements, department notices, whatever it may be. And all the folks that worked in the chief's office, if they found a mistake, could stop and not send that out until they had a concern that was listed in there that they could either bring to me or the assistant chief or the captains in order to make sure that communication was clear. And one of the things that I had to rule in is, look, if you work up here and you read something that you don't understand, don't send it, because somehow we screwed it up, because if you work up here and you don't know what we're saying when we send something out department wide, you can be sure that 80% of the folks aren't going to understand it either. And so as a you have to understand, as a chief, that you have to put out there consistent messaging, number one. But number two is communicate to the folks in a way that they can relate to, right? And so, like when you're talking to a community group, you don't want to use a lot of numbers. Oh, I was 1097 there, and there was a 187, and because of that, we had to go code 3. That kind of jargon that is not going to be effective. So it's the same thing when you're talking to your folks. You don't want to talk in a lot of acronyms about the budget or those kinds of things. You want to be clear, you want to be simple, and you want to be understandable. And if the folks that work with you don't understand what something says, or they don't understand what you're trying to say, and then you need to practice and figure out what's going on. But that's, communication is vital, I think, to the success of the chief, but anybody in the organization, honestly.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, let's talk about lack of self-awareness, not knowing your strengths and weaknesses and, making poor decisions and communication type of things.
Well, I think that, again, your lack of self-awareness really creates issues, as the chief pointed out. When you have a chief that is unsure about themselves and, lacks the confidence to mentor people, and provide opportunities for people. One of the things that happens is when the chief goes into a room, hopefully they know they're not the smartest person in the room. But I think that the ones that think they're the smartest person in the room is where this can be a problem. If you're a chief and you think you're the smartest person in the room, you probably have a problem. I really have to say that, because there is no way that you could have be an expert on everything that your organization does. That's why you have experts. That's why you have people that you send to training for specific things. So knowing your weaknesses, knowing your strengths, okay, but also understanding other folks and their strengths and their weaknesses also helps you. So I think that's a big importance to make sure that you have that.
Go ahead, Chalo.
That's a good comment.
Hey, Chief, and one of the things too, and I'm real quick, is it's good to not know, or even if you know, it's good to show that you don't know, so your guys can actually pick it up and do something about it. I always start with,
Absolutely.
I'll tell them, today I was this old when I learned this. I tell them I was this old today when I didn't know this, and some people, oh, you didn't know about that? No, I was this old. I learned it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You guys taught me something. Anyways, let's go. Lack of confidence, Chief. Lack of
Okay.
confidence.
So I think the other part of it is, when people lack confidence, they tend to micromanage. And I think we've always had, we've all had bosses that do that to us, right? They lack confidence. And so therefore they're projecting that onto you, and as a chief, you need to have trust, and you need to project, that you have confidence in folks. So if you have lack of confidence in yourself, it's very hard to project that. And it actually turns into a problem for you in the long run. And I think it's important for people to understand, because you can't really micromanage in an organization, when you're the top person. You can't. And if you do, then, you're working 24 hours a day, and that can only happen for so long.
Yeah, burnout.
Absolutely.
Hey, so hey, Chief. So the next one is inability to learn from your mistakes.
So I think this happens in all organizations. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again in just a different format, there's a problem there. And one of the things is, as individuals and as human beings, when we make a mistake, we look at it and say, okay, well, I'm not going to put my hand on that burner again because I know it's hot. So when we translate that into police work, is you're going to be making mistakes. There is no question about it. All organizations, all people make mistakes. The idea is, are you learning from your mistakes? Is your organization growing from the mistakes it makes? And I think that's what's important. And, a lot of times chiefs are not pushing, are more about punishing people for mistakes rather than having people learn from the mistakes as an organization, and I think that's what's important, is making sure that your organization, whenever your folks don't do something correctly, that they learn from those mistakes. And, that's why you always change policies and procedures and those kinds of things, because hopefully as you're learning from your mistakes, you're able to translate that into an organizational component that makes the organization better.
Hey, Chief, can you give us an example of a mistake that you made that you learned from as a chief of police? So if there is a chief of police watching, they could say, you know what, I need to make a change.
Well, I think I'm trying to think, because I know I made a lot of mistakes. So I'm just trying to, actually one of the ones we originally did was we were looking at, when we were doing the body cameras, we looked at several components, and I think the direction we're going the first time be with all the components that we were looking at was the fact that the city wanted us to save money. And the problem with that is that we didn't have any way to support the program, and so originally when we went with the idea, it sounds, well, they're just body cameras. Officers just put it on the camera and that's it, But the reality of it is that the back end is what's most important, where officers can't change the video. how do you send it for prosecution to the DA, all those things that as an organization, we had problems identifying on how we were going to do that. And the first time we came up with a proposal, we didn't have any of those. And then when we finally went to council to get approval, we were able to identify those components and go with a company that actually gave us full service, which cost a little bit more, but for us was invaluable. Because if we didn't have back end support, we would have, that whole program, we would have probably been a failure of the whole video camera program.
Go ahead, Chalo, the last question.
You have the chief sideways. He might
Chief
fall off the
is
screen.
sideways.
Oh, yeah, Manny, if you
I'm
like
always
just setting your
sideways.
phone, changing your phone sideways, just put setting your phone, I think it moved somehow.
Okay, let me see if I can do this.
I think this is the last error, right, Chalo? And I think
Yeah,
this is a very, very important one.
Yeah. So
Very,
here
very
we go.
important one.
Yeah. There you go. All right, chief.
All right,
All
there
right,
we go.
There you go.
You were gonna fall off our screen. I don't want you to get hurt. Uh-oh, you disappeared.
Uh-oh.
There,
There
okay,
it
there
is.
you go.
Go ahead.
Inability to delegate, chief.
Well, and again, I think that really comes down to trusting your folks. You have to learn how to trust your folks. And if like I said, we've all had folks that we worked for that we don't feel trust us because they have a failure to understand that it's important to delegate, because delegating and letting you do your job allows everybody to grow. It allows the individual who gave you that opportunity. It allows the person doing it to get more competent if they're not already competent at what they're doing. So I think delegating is important. As a chief, you should know that way before you become a chief. But if you don't, when you as a chief don't delegate, you're going to have some problems throughout the organization, because more than likely you didn't mentor folks and you're not learning from your mistakes. So the idea is, so you want to keep everything around you, but that's not possible. There's just too many components to being a good chief to not delegate. So
Go ahead, Benny.
Hey, Chief. Tell us about this book. It's called Police Chief: How to Attain and Succeed in the Critical Position. It's a book written by Daniel McDivitt and Mark Field.
So, one of the things that I did before you invited me on is I always like to look at what's out there, because there aren't too many things related to being a police chief. And I have a couple books that the Police Executive Research Forum and has put together, and those kinds of things. But being a police chief, I think this is a good book. I saw a lot of good things in it that'll give you some important components, many of which I just went over, because these really are about being a police chief is really about leadership. And a lot of these components that we just talked about, are really leadership failures. But the book itself, I think, gives you a pretty good perspective on being a police chief. And I think it's important to always leave folks with something more, right? Something that if they are striving to be a police chief somewhere, that at least they get a better understanding of what it is and are able to sink their teeth into something that is going to help them.
Chief, and one of the things that, this is me. I don't know and it's okay if you don't think the same way I do, but not everybody is born to be chief. I think, like you said, the calling of being a police officer, either you have it or you don't. You're born with it. And I think, not there's people that can go, to college and they get their graduate and they get their doctorate, and then they want to be chiefs, but these guys are not chief material.
Can't make a decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't have. They're missing, a lot of these qualities that you need to have in order to be a successful chief. You can be a chief, but you're not going to be successful.
I agree with you. It's not a cut out for everybody, and I think sometimes Even when I look back, it's like, well, you know what, I might have been just happy as a captain, or I might have been just happy as a lieutenant. I think, and I might have, but I think what sometimes gets the better of us is, when we first get our first promotion, right, to sergeant, and then you're working as a sergeant, you're looking at a lieutenant, and you go, I can do that job, and then you get a lieutenant, you're the captain, I can do that job, it just kind of keeps playing on itself. But the reality of it is that being the chief has a lot of components that you only get pieces of when you're in any other position. And when you're actually the chief and have to make all the decisions and bring people together, it is a completely different animal that I think most people think of as of the position.
Mhm.
So I agree with you.
And another thing I tell people too, Chief, is don't become a chief when you got 10 years left in your career.
Mhm.
Because a chief's, I mean, if you get 3 years, that's good. If you go beyond 3 years, man, you're awesome. If you do 5, 6, 8, I know a chief that did 12 years here in our county, and when he got fired, he was upset. I said, "Dude, you did 12 years." It's the only people that do 12 years are elected sheriffs most of the time, or somebody
Yeah.
that's is being has a good department that protects them. But other than that, how many years did you do as chief?
6. I did
6
6.
years, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. But to me was as long as I do 3, I ended up doing 4. I was happy just to do 3 years. I said, 3 years and I'll walk away. But you got to know you're ready to retire. You can't take it where you say, well, you know what, I got so many years for me to get vested. Because I think at that point you sell your soul to politics and not so much to the job because you are afraid to get fired.
Well, and I agree with you, and you can't be afraid to get fired. But as a chief, I think if you take a running back and people are always trying to tackle you, that's probably a pretty good analogy of being a police chief, And all it takes is one bad tackle and you're out of the game, right? And you no longer have a career or a job. So I agree with you 100%.
Hey, Manny, our time has gone. Another quick comment from Doug Collier, another legend from San Diego PD. He's going to be on next Thursday. These great topics that all levels in the organization can learn and use. Definitely, Doug, we look forward
True
to seeing you
statement.
next week. Great statement. With that said, Benny, any last words for Chief Rodriguez?
Chief, it was really awesome to get to meet you and get to talk to you. I heard many, many stories from David about how great you are, and you're just a great human. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Big Sean?
I think it's all made up, but
great.
thank you.
Hey, great seeing you, Manny. It was a great topics. Great topics.
Thank you.
Chief Chalo?
Hey, Chief, thank you so much. It's an honor interviewing you, and hopefully we'll meet up one of these days. That's what I tell all of my guests, but you're still in National City, or in San Diego area, so right?
Correct. La Mesa, actually. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. My brother lives in La Mesa, so that's awesome.
Oh,
We'll have to hook up for some coffee or something like that.
Yeah, let me know next time you're in town.
Órale, pues, ya dijo.
All right.
Hey,
great
Manny,
to see you.
Great to see you once again, brother. You're that brother that I never had, and you know why. You were always there by my side, and you're still there. Whenever I have a problem, you're the first I call. Thank you for everything, Manny. It was an honor to have you with us, and it ain't going to be the last time. You're coming back. Thank you, and God bless you, Manny.
Hey,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manny.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
You too, bud.
All right. My honor.
Man, guys, what an honor. What an honor.
We could
That's
have talked another hour, dude.
Oh, yeah.
He's
a cop's
We could have
cop.
talked
Cop's
for
cop,
another hour.
a man's man, just a good man overall.
Man, I would like to go on the road with this guy and teach some classes, teach command staff how to be a command.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you his number, Chalo. So next time you're in San Diego with your son or your wife or something, stop by to see him. He's that guy that will take you to lunch, and you guys could talk for hours. And he's a good man. Good man. With that said, Benny, tell us about next week's guest.
Well, we already talked about it at next Tuesday. Our guest is a retired San Diego Police Detective, Nina Medina. Nina is the current president of the National Latino Peace Officers Association. She's going to be with us, and she's going to discuss her career at San Diego PD and her goals as president of the NLPOA. You and Sean know her the best. You guys work with her, and you guys good cop.
She was a good detective.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Benny, she could have made sergeant. She probably could have made assistant chief. Very smart, but you know what? She chose to be a detective her whole career, and she chose to work Southeast San Diego because she had a tie to that community. So that shows you a lot of her character, who she was. Am I right, Sean? I mean,
Yeah.
this girl, I mean,
Yeah.
she speaks very well. You'll see her, but you know
Yeah.
what? She chose to be in the community, to help out the community. And I think we're going to see that she's probably going to mention, if not, we're going to mention it in our interview next week. We're excited about having her with us.
Yes.
With that said, Benny, last words to our guests. I mean, to our viewers.
Just to the guys that are out there, on the beat, just head on a swivel. Be smart. What you do. Remember, there's cameras everywhere. Be smart. Be good.
Big Sean.
Same. Just watch your rear end and always think tactically and always be safe. Doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Exactly. Chalo, Chief.
And me, like always, man, as a chief, one of our biggest topics is integrity means everything, man. Those can make or break your career.
Exactly. Live a purpose-driven life. Live every day like it's your last day on earth. And remember, you don't need a badge. You don't need a uniform to continue being a sheepdog. Continue saving lives. Continue mentoring. Continue giving back to the community. With that said, we'll see you next Tuesday, and then we'll see you next Thursday with Doug Collier. It's going to be a great interview. Thank you. God bless you.